Hello, fellow actors, writers, directors, and production crew. Welcome to Small Talk with Tony, an interview series where we sit down with people in the biz to make small talk. I'm your host, the owner, chief storyteller, and the Tony behind Tony Video. Now, over the course of the series, you'll hear stories and learn personal experiences from people just like you. So, let's make some small talk. Actions always find a way to shine brighter than the things you say. So, today's guest is the brilliant Kyle Mecca. Kyle is a director and casting director who currently resides in Western New York. He is a graduate of the Theater and Film Arts program at Buffalo State College and was the director of the feature film Dwelling. Kyle is a casting director with Casting Buffalo, a casting agency located in Western New York, helping to grow opportunities for actors. So if everyone can please join me in giving a very warm welcome. Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time for some small talk.
How you doing, Tony? Thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun one.
Well, Kyle, with your experience, a lot of actors will be interested to hear from the other side of the casting process. But before we get into all that, tell me about some of the things that led you to the film industry, and how did you become a director and casting director?
I've since I've been a child, I was like 8 or 9 or 10. I forgot when, but I just loved movies my entire life. But around that time, my dad actually won a video camera from his store, and he just kind of like gave it to me. And since my love of movies just extended from early Universal monster movies to Godzilla movies to westerns to all over the place, I said, okay, well, here's my opportunity to go make some stuff myself. So me and a group of my friends kind of took that camera and just started making small little short films and improv to comedy and everything we naturally did over the course of the summer just was filmed, basically. And it was me just, wanting to tell stories. And that just kind of evolved throughout into middle school and into high school. I kind of learned the writing side of things and writing creative short stories and just kind of just wanting to continue to be a storyteller. And high school, I ended up taking a film class and fell in love with it. And it was absolutely like the thing to do. And actually, between middle school and high school, one of my favorite teachers in middle school, my art teacher, Mr. Tomasello, he was doing a summer program that taught you how to make film. And so me and one of my buddies who I'd run around and already shot a ton of things with took it. And it was an amazing experience because we were able to, write, shoot, and edit the whole entire thing in the case of one summer. And that just kind of bled into high school. And then when it came to college, it was like, okay, well, what do I do? Do I go try to do, this type of career, or do I pursue something that I absolutely love? And, fortunately, I have amazing parents who support me in the arts and the creativity and said, listen, go do what you love, pursue it as much as you can, keep dreaming, and the dream will only get bigger and never stop. And so that's what I did. I started it, and luckily enough, I got into Buffalo State University for their television and film arts program, and got there through my writing side, and was able to make a ton of different short films during that time. And it led me to graduating in 2013, but meeting my buddy Brandon Williams, who was a producer. And he had acted in a ton of SAG projects, and as well as was in the media production side at Buff State. And we kind of clicked through the last summer. And we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, well, what do we do now once that college is over? Like, are we ready to go? Or is it possible through all the connections over the last 4 years to make something homegrown? And, we met ND Studios, Matt Nardone, Matt Fleck, Bethany Hedges, and Joe Blodgett. And Joe Blodgett and I worked together on a ton of like short film stuff and kind of expanded into this world of like let's keep creating. And so Brandon and I got together and said, okay, well, is it possible to make a feature film here in Buffalo using the resources we have, using the crew that we know, and using the actors that he's been able to you know work with, and also me pulling from the college side of things that I was able to work with college students acting students who've been looking to jump up and try to use my knowledge of directing and casting at that point to make something happen. And we said, yeah, let's go for it. And so I wrote a screenplay called Dwelling, and it was 90 pages and an hour and a half, and we ended up casting people from LA to Chicago, over to Ithaca, and locally, um, in the child roles, and they were SAG actors, and we were able to qualify for the New York State tax credit at the time, which was incredible. It was a lot lower for the amount of expectations to actually qualify for it, but we did that. We ended up jumping a Kickstarter, launching a Kickstarter, and raised over like 16,000 on that, and then from there gained more investors and more donators, and ended up raising a budget close to 60,000. And which over the course of the next 3 years, we shot in 2014 for 15 days in the summer, and then we went into basically almost 2 years of post and then finding distribution, and it was an incredible journey. And finally, 2017, we was able to be distributed out by a subsidiary of Sony Pictures Entertainment, and there was a Walmart exclusive. It was put on Best Buy, Family Video. You could have got it, and then it went on streaming on Amazon Prime. And now it could be bought on Amazon Prime, or it could be streamed on Tubi for free. So a huge journey of kind of just throwing myself into it. That old theory of, you got to be a self-starter and you got to just make it work, right? Do it yourself, kind of get it out there. And we had the right amount of lightning strike in the bottle that we were able to make this happen. And, we had the camaraderie and the amazing friends and crew, that film family that just grew from that. And from Dwelling is kind of when my career kind of launched, and so did so many of the people who worked on the film's career launched. From there, we kind of hopped film to film over the course of the next couple of years into the key positions that we are now. And when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows came out, I think that was 2015, that spring, they hired a ton of local PAs, but all those PAs on that shoot are a lot of the major players in the Buffalo film family who are now, full-time human members. They're key positions on sets. They are business owners within it, and I've traveled and everywhere across the U.S. working in the film industry. So that's kind of how I got started and thrown into it, and now it's just been a, Indiana Jones size ball chasing after me, and me continuing to roll with it, and having a great time with it.
It's funny you mention that, because I swear I had like a very similar situation. My dad, he got a camera. I borrowed it. I played around with it, made some videos, and that just kind of escalated to bigger and better things. So, I think the main difference between, the actor's mindset and the director's mindset is that actors are more about presenting the story specifically through their characters, whereas the directors and even writers create, and they have to guide the story as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
So, you are a director yourself as well as a casting director. So talk to us about the role as a director, and then how that differs from being a casting director, and how you grew into those roles.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, my end goal, and I am still a director, and the way that I've looked at stuff is a little bit different. I was able to start with short films, learning the process in short films. I had a failed short film that, it was never released because things happened in production that I needed to learn from. And that really, really molded me as a director. And then Dwelling happened, and it was fantastic. And, it took me on this amazing journey. But then I needed to take that step back and be like, well, okay, I'm going from directing to, being a production assistant and working on films. But I always took that in stride, where even when I was in school, every course that I took was towards me being a director. So taking acting classes to know how to talk to actors, taking theater classes to understand where did it all come from, and then taking directing courses, taking creative writing courses, poetry, um, you know, narrative to autobiographical, trying to everything that I could feed in. And then when I got to working on sets, it was working as many positions as possible because I wanted to understand how does the set work, and how does each position work. Because if I'm going to be a director, I want to be able to communicate with everybody efficiently, and that this way I can share my vision and my story easily with these people and have tampered expectations on what can be delivered, what can't be. And if I want, 50 to 100 people to run through a wall for me, like I want to be able to actually speak their language and not just, seem like this guy's bullshitting it all. And that's what I wanted to do. So as a director, it's still streamlined through my career. That's kind of like my building force. Everything that I work on, I'm taking and learning from the directors I am working for, if I'm an assistant director, or having the opportunities that I have had to be a commercial director as well, and going into the agency world and learning how to speak with agencies and creating creatives and working in that world and kind of transitioning there, because I still want to keep creating and keeping working that muscle, because that is my goal, is to continue directing and make the next project, right? And the transition then from like what a turning into a casting director as well, is that it's basically like two parallel lines constantly going. And I feel like a lot of the attributes that I've learned from being a director, coincide with being a casting director. The way that I became a casting director was back when, what year was this? 2016 maybe, when Marshall came into town. And Marshall was kind of the first big project in a long time that came into Buffalo. And I think before then was maybe the Keanu Reeves movie. And Marshall had, an all-star cast to it. We had, Chadwick Boseman, we had Kate Hudson, we had Josh Gad, we had Dan Stevens, we had Jim Cromwell. Like, it was an all-star cast of people in Buffalo. So everyone who needed to surround that cast needed to be great. And again, it was just that perfect storm of everyone who had been like, it's like we all been training for this moment, for when this film to come in town. And now we could fill out all these positions. I always have to thank Rich Wall for luckily giving me an interview with Chris Bonjourn, who was the UPM on Marshall, and said, hey, we're looking for an extras casting director. Are you interested? And I interviewed for it, and I fortunately got the part, but I also knew how many thousands of people we needed to cast for that film. And it was also, a period piece. So we're talking about, we're not even playing Buffalo at that point. We were playing, I forgot exactly what city it was, but it was up in New England. And it was like, okay, this is where we're playing. And we need to make sure people not only look this period, but they have to fit into the real clothes that wardrobe is getting. And they can't have, a ton of crazy features doing that. So it was like, okay, how do I expand from knowing only people in my inner circle to, hundreds of people that I'm going to have to cast in various roles for background. And I brought in Peter Johnson and Harry Lipsitz, who had done background casting for a small film from John Abrahams called All at Once, and that happened the summer before. They were able to do background for that. It was like a lot of party and college campus stuff, and they filled it out amazingly, and they worked well together. They knew each other forever. And Peter had already been working with the local casting director up into a point right before pre-pro, before we started shooting. And then I snagged Peter over to me to help be like, hey, we need feet on the ground, and we need to do this street type of casting to really bring the city of Buffalo to life, because it's the biggest thing in the summer in Buffalo, and we need to make sure we have as many faces as possible. And not only that, but I felt like under the gun because Ruth Carter was the production designer, or not the production, the costume designer. And Ruth Carter is an Academy Award winning, costume designer. At the time, she was nominated a few times, but she didn't win until after Marshall, because she was actually interviewing for Black Panther while we were shooting Marshall, and then she ended up winning for that. So I had this, prestigious Hollywood designer who I was working under, and I had never done extras casting before. And it was amazing because she was able to take me under her wing and sit there and say, here, you call this person, look into this. This is how you can research to find this. All I want from you is basically, these are my lookbooks, and I want to make sure that every single person you cast can go into my room, can fit into my clothes, and look great under the gun. And I said, okay, that's my goal. That's it. We had an amazing director, Reggie Hunlin, but like my goal was to impress Ruth, not even Reggie, because it was like we clicked so well. And it was like, okay, goal. And we never, ever had a conflict. It was just gold all the way, because I felt like and Harry says this all the time, like, we work with people and we basically help dress the scenes with people. And that was our goal, was like, how do we complement the dressing of these clothes of this period piece to make it stand out with Ruth and with the production design to make it fall, perfectly in line. So that was kind of the first experience that jumped me into casting, but I fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with it. And the next opportunity I had was actually the offer to do background and day player casting. So people who don't know who day players casting is, it's basically like people who only work 1 to 3 days, have like a limited amount of lines. They might be like the baker, or like a gas station attendant, or someone local that you're going to run into, the person on the street real quick who's biking by, who says a line, something smaller. And but they're usually from the area, because you want to showcase that area, and they don't, sometimes productions don't want to pay for that small of a role, by bringing them in and putting them in the hotel. And it's just like, well, I'd rather give opportunities to people who are local, and it's an amazing start for actors trying to gain their union card and get vouchers and kind of go from there. So I had the opportunity to do that on The True Adventures of Wolf Boy, and again brought in my two buddies to do that, for the background, because I kind of like stood in day player world, and Harry kind of took care of background. And then basically every film after that, we'd kind of separated but came back to it, and just continued to fall in love. And with the opportunity of doing the day players, it was, now I get to do auditions. I get to review auditions. I had people in the room where I could give feedback, and we could kind of have this little collaboration to find an area, and speaking directly with the director now, and working with the producers and the directors firsthand to get their vision and relay that, and kind of, have the opportunity to have someone who's running the film, listen to your opinion and take you seriously, and be like rewarded by saying, hey, I really respect what you're saying, and this, I agree, we're going to cast this person, or I agree, we go in this direction. That was an amazing, rewarding experience that felt like, okay, I can do this for a living. And that's what kind of eventually spawned into Casting Buffalo, which we officially established in 2020, in the same month that everything shut down. But we all, Peter, Harry, and I had all been doing this casting for commercials and films separately, and sometimes would come together for like the bigger tier major films. But eventually we kind of looked at each other and said, well, why don't we just band together resources and just do it together? We work extremely well together. Let's just make this our business. and that's how Casting Buffalo was formed. And since then, it just, again, another, on top of the other Indiana Jones ball, there's another one chasing us. So it's just continuing to keep going forward.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like the theme of what you're saying is momentum. I mean, you have to
Oh yeah.
start something, and even if you mess up here and there, you have to keep going because, well, if you keep moving, you can only get to your destination faster. And I think many people get discouraged because they want immediate results, but for the majority of people, they may not realize how much time it actually takes. I mean, you found success, and it may have taken you some time to find that success, but what do you think are the factors that contribute to an actor's success?
Yeah, I mean, the world has changed a lot since we kind of even started as a company, and a lot of it had to do with COVID. And before we, when we were casting the bigger projects like the Marshalls and the Bashiras and the Wolf Boys, we would do, mass casting calls where it was okay. Let's you. We had hundreds of people come into like the Albright Knox or M Trip, and we would take their photos, we would grab their resumes, and we would just like put them down as a cattle call. So this way we had everybody available. And then we would do in-person auditions. We rarely took in video taped auditions. It was, everything was in person. We had a schedule of like 30, 40 people a day. They'd come in and I would be the one behind the camera and hitting record, and or my casting assistant would be the one doing it. And we would be this face-to-face audition. And then callbacks were the same exact thing. There were interaction. Director was in the room. The director sometimes had a camera for a camera test in the room. And now, since 2020, it's complete 180. It's everything is basically how we're doing it right now. It's through the computer. It's and there's highs and lows to that. The high is you're getting more volume and more auditions, so more chances to find the person you're looking for. So for me as a casting director, it's, I instead of having cattle calls, people who feel like they actually seem to fit, um, will submit, and I can look through everything right here and more efficiently. Uh, but at the same exact time, you're losing that uh, casting director to actor um, relationship. Like you're not in the same room anymore. And it isn't until a callback, and even then, like you're still through a video screen if you're doing video callbacks, and you really don't know. It's the air of the person, their stature, their just how they hold themselves doesn't come through as well through a video screen. And that's kind of different. And now I know that we're slowly trying to transition back to the way it was before COVID and actually holding a mix of both, kind of have the best of both worlds at this point. So I think as actors trying to audition and trying to make it in the new age is, we've now to a point that we might have a good majority of actors who've never had an in-person audition when it comes to, film or television. They've maybe experienced in theater, but like when it comes to camera, they might have never experienced it, and now it's a new thing to learn. It's a new thing to set up your own space to do auditions for, to figure out how to get up to date headshots in an ever changing world, um, and taking on technology. You had some actors before who couldn't even understand technology, and now you're kind of throwing yourself into, you have to learn technology in order to better yourself, into giving you a chance. It's just increasing your chances. So my advice would be that's huge. So I have all the confidence in the world in which you believe who you are as a performer and what you are as an actor. But it's increasing your chances through technicality, right? Learning how to do self tapes, how to have a blank back wall that's not very loud, something gray, something neutral, um, and having your right lighting, even if it's a ring light or a basic 3-point lighting setup that's soft, sees all your features, that you're able to slate correctly, and that you're able to address the camera and give us enough of your personality before starting an audition. And when you do start that audition, that you have someone reading back for you, that you're looking in the right direction, your head's not down low, you're actually looking not at the camera, a little to the side of the camera, and you're playing to something, um, where you're not spoiling your chances to get not cast from just basic technicalities. And I think that's gigantic, because if you've ever had the chance to watch an audition or watch a theater play, um, and within 5 seconds if someone's good or not, right? And I don't want people who are fallen to the technical learning curve of technology to get missed out upon, because who are probably amazing, but those 5 seconds that we had to decide right in the beginning, those first impressions, which are so important, are lost on because lost knowledge before you've even gotten a chance to perform. And it kind of seems like, oh, well, that's kind of petty. Well, why can't you still look at the performance? And it's like, it's true, and we try to as much as we can, but it's hard to if we can't see your face and it's super, super dark and the audio's half bit, right? It's like it just destroys it for us. So that idea of like now integrating back being in person, but now it's now learning that again. If you haven't had a theater experience of going in and auditioning in front of people, now you have to get back into that role of, again, as soon as you walk through that door is when the first impression starts. It's how you carry yourself. And you're either going to carry yourself as the character or as a performer that can collaborate with you and then switch into character and make bold choices, right?
It's interesting you say that, because I've been helping people with audition tapings, and the services that I provide are meant to alleviate those very issues that actors have. Such as having a quiet room, or a room with a blank white wall, proper lighting, audio, video, all that kind of stuff. So, sure. But even having all of those tools, I've come across casting calls where it's either super detailed or there's like no information, and you're basically supposed to guess. So, I mean, there's no standard self-tape audition format. So as a casting director, you talked about having the correct slate in the audition tape. What is the correct slate? And what are the things that you should always have in your audition tape that could improve your chances of getting cast and are just universally important to a casting director like yourself?
I mean, to get cast, the best ways to increase your chances are going to be knowing the slate easy, and the slate is usually, and now it depends, sometimes it's requested differently depending on the casting director, so there is no like standard slate, but what we usually like to know is your name, if you're union or non-union, so if you're SAG or equity or non, if what your height is. Height's important for the camera. We need to know if we're casting two people, how they stature up to each other. And then, where you're from, and then if you're willing to be a local hire. And when we ask for local hires, what that means is a lot of the stuff that we do as Casting Buffalo is when there's major films, is they're doing the local casting. So I kind of mentioned it before, where it's these small day or player type roles. So we want you to be as local as possible because we want you to have the role. But there might be some people who are from, Syracuse or Rochester, who are only a few hours away, easy day trip, and worth them getting a voucher and move in, but have a chance to be a local hire, and that you're willing to, they might have a cousin or an uncle who live near Buffalo and have a place to stay. They're willing to drive out. They're willing to fly to a place. for that opportunity to act. So we want to know if you're willing to be a local hire or not, which is basically waiving saying that um, I'm not expecting to be flown out or paid for my travel, and I'm not expected to be given a hotel. Now, a lot of productions will give a courtesy hotel depending on certain things. During COVID, they needed to, because you needed to be tested so long beforehand, and then immediately come in. But depending on the size of production, they sometimes will offer it, or the way that hours swing. Right. So if we're doing full overnights and they don't want you to like work 14 hours and then turn around and have to drive home. But it always depends production to production. But that's why we ask for the local hire. So knowing your slate and getting to the point, boom, 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 that's your first impression. Making it yourself is either, as the workable collaborative actor, and then jumping right into it. And with that, once you're doing your audition, make sure there's someone reading with you. And that's for a couple different reasons. I don't want to, it's hard to hear like a pre-recorded voice coming back. It's distracting. You talking to nobody and nobody answering back is also distracting, because there's something missing for me as a director. And that is, I wanted, more times than not, 70% of the time, I would say, for me personally, I'm looking at how you're reacting to the other lines that you're hearing compared to what's coming out of your mouth as well. It isn't just say a line and then you're just waiting for the next, and saying a line and then waiting for the next. It's, you're in character. You are listening and reacting to whatever's happening. And having that reader makes it easier for you to stay in that moment. Because now you're not making just one bold choice, you're making two bold choices, or trying to, or just so focused, you need to focus on what you're doing. And those reading in between the lines of, especially like how you mentioned already, Tony, sometimes these casting calls, and it's true, each casting notice is totally different. Each set of sides that you receive are totally different. And some breakdowns have a ton of context, and some are literally just say, person who likes to stand in the rain. And you're just like, okay, how do I make anything out of that, right? And it's you being able to make bold choices, which I think is the last major piece of advice I would like to give to people auditioning, is make the bold choice. And it's not as hard as you think to make that bold choice. And the easiest way that I can say it is, when you first read a pair of sides, that first instinct, throw it away. Absolutely throw away that first instinct. Bring up the second instinct, tape one. Look at it, then throw it away, and then go to a third instinct. And usually that 3 or 4 is going to get you more in some place that's different, right? When you hear, like, when you get an audition that'll be just like a school teacher, everyone automatically says, I know how to play a school teacher. We're not looking for everyone who knows how to play a school teacher. We want the person who fits the role and kind of creates something on nothing out of that school teacher, right? Reading the context, creating what's you. And another, theory to that is, as an actor, you should know your type. You should know who you can play and who you can't play, right? Personally, I can't see Tony Grande playing like a big burly tattoo artist.
Oh man, that's my favorite role to play.
Right? But you play to who you can play, right? And knowing your type. And a lot of people sit there, well, you might get typecast, but you got to play to your strengths as much as possible, right? But that doesn't mean that, like, hey, I look like I can be a teacher, I have to play a teacher. No. You're playing Tony Grande as a teacher. And then taking your personality and kind of changing it and collaborating it with the context in the script. Because you as an actor bring something to the table that's different than everyone else. It's like kind of the old school age theory of thinking of like, you are different and you should embrace your different. That's exactly what you do in auditioning. Um, Throw out those initial herd mentality type of ideas and throw in something that is you. And you will stand out easily, easily stand out, because it is that a lot of that herd mentality when it comes to like bigger auditions like that. They just read it for what it is and they audition for what it is. And it's easy to pick out those two or three people who stood out because they made bold choices. They made something that was theirs, them. And you know what? Not only that, but you're also not just auditioning for that part, but you're auditioning to the casting director for the future, right? If you make maybe you're not right for that particular role, but you impress on how you just gave a performance and how it seemed so open you are and good at taking direction, um, that they sit there and go, oh, you might not be right for this part. You might be right for this other part. We kind of want you to read for this. Or on the next project, I might have two or three projects already in my head. Or I file you away and sit there and say, okay, next time I know that I'm going to reach out to Tony Grande because I know that he's going to be able to bring something to this role because I kind of seen it. I've seen a spark of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that definitely helps us understand the process because, half the battle is just knowing what and what not to do. And you were able to highlight the important pieces of a successful audition tape. And it just saves everybody time from both the actor side and the casting side. So as new actors, producers, and casting directors are coming into the industry, if you look at the theme of your experiences and what people may learn from them, how would you describe your theme? What's the most important thing that you think other people should know?
I would say the theme for me to know me for is being, the collaborator, not just a collaborator, but the collaborator. And when I say that is because this industry that I work in, and I'm fortunate and love that I'm able to make a career in this industry to do, is all about networking and collaborating in every junction. And what I've learned is that, like, I've been on a ton of sets where you have people who just, have their single tunnel vision and that's it. My way's the highway. I've seen things where people aren't open to conversations, who can't have a simple conversation with another department, has preconceived notions, and that's not me. It's not me. It's not never been me, and I am that person that I want to be able to have a conversation with everybody. I'm a people person, especially when it comes to a project and a creative. We're all here to create something, and I'd rather have a single vision become everybody's vision than being basically, you know, told what to do in a way that just is not fun and worth being there for. If you're going to be on a set for 10 to 15 hours a day for a few days to a couple months shoot, you need people who are actually nice, that work together well, that are calm, cool, collected, that are eager to be there, and that want to have a great day, and that are open for collaboration. And that is someone that I've really prided myself in being, um, because I want whatever set that I'm on to be the best set that I've ever been on when it comes to that. And that continues. So if I come into it looking at it a certain way and feeling a certain way and wanting to bring that to whatever set I'm going to, um, then hopefully that'll lift other people's heads to feel that same exact way, right? And I think that's the leadership qualities that I've kind of learned throughout my career, which is just, you hold your head up high, everyone else will too. And trying to bring that to a project or anything that I do.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for taking the time for some small talk. We really appreciate your time, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you. So, what's the best way for people to follow you and learn more about your journey as well as other things you have coming up?
Yeah, so I mean, the if you want to, keep following my journey, you can find me on Instagram at McGuffin personally, but also not only that, my company Casting Buffalo. Follow Casting Buffalo on Instagram. Follow it on Facebook as well. We are an amazing company where if you're trying to get your start, or if you're a veteran and continue to act, this is how you can start. Buffalo is about to get shot into the stratosphere with films and opportunities going in now that the strike is over and going into next season. Our film commissioners have already had their phones off their hooks with productions that had been already scouted or ready to go, and now we're saying, okay, let's go. We have this amazing opportunity to have a tax credit here in Buffalo that is one of the largest in the entire country, which means you're going to see Atlanta jobs and productions switching over to upstate New York and Western New York and everywhere that possibly can fit within this radius. And if you want to work on something, if you want to get in the union as a SAG actor, vouchers are going to become available either on the background side, or there's going to be a ton of day player roles that are going to become available and that you can throw in to try to get in that way. There's going to be stand-in opportunities in the future. And if you've never thought of doing a stand-in opportunity as an actor, I 150% suggest looking at stand-in opportunities. If you fit that opportunity, go for it, because you get to be on set every single day watching how all the process works. And especially if you're new to it, if you're new to the process, if you want to learn more of the process, or all of a sudden you sit there and say, I kind of want to shift into actually crewing. Like, it is an amazing opportunity. You're being lit by the director of photography and the gaffer and the key grip, and you're there on set and you're learning lines and you're learning blocking and you're experiencing everything with whatever lead actors there are. And it's just training. It's an amazing masterclass training that you're getting paid for on set. So look for these ton of opportunities that are coming your way, and you're going to come to castingbuffalo.com to find that. You can follow us again on Instagram and Facebook. Join our network. Our network is completely free. All you're doing is submitting your profile. There's no cost associated with that, and you're being thrown into our database. This way, when opportunities are coming out, you can also subscribe by email, in which when there's new casting notices put out, we will post them on Instagram and Facebook, and we will email them out. But there's a new thing that Casting Buffalo is about to jump out with, and it's going to be coming in the coming month, and it's going to be called Casting Buffalo All Access. It is going to be actually a paid subscription to Casting Buffalo. It's very minuscule, but what it will do, will give you first looks on certain casting notices. It will also give you a weekly or a monthly newsletter, actor of the month, kind of learn their journey, see how you can follow that journey or become that, success stories, as well as a ton of different discounts and opportunities in the area for local businesses that'll help you become a better actor and get on screen. So please take a look at Casting Buffalo and all the amazing opportunities, especially coming in to the new year, because we're going to need to cast Buffalo, and we want to make sure that you're there on set.
Well, that concludes another episode of Small Talk with Tony. I want to thank my guest for joining me. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. It's been wonderful, and I hope we talk again sometime soon.
And thank you for watching. You can check out the latest episodes at tonyvideo.com/smalltalk. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram, where you can get the latest news. See you next time. Actions always find a way to shine brighter than the things you say.